Welcome back guys to another episode of Tough Garage. Just giving you another little update on the Cortina and where we're at. So you would have seen from the last episode we started doing panel alignment and gaps and that sort of thing. Initially I started doing the gapping at 4mm. That was what I was set out to achieve. But then I later found out and realized that with product build-up, so epoxy, primer, 2K and clear, that gap would get closed up quite a lot, probably by about an extra mil. So I had to go back over the car and do all the gaps again, back to 5mm on this side of the car. So the boot lid, as you saw before, was 4mm in the previous episode. It's now 5mm. So that's all been done, all in 5mm all the way around. I've also cleaned up the edges of the panels, so the little pitting that it had from the weld not fully filling up the edge has now been all done. So the door's done as well. So that's all in 5mm. So 5mm gaps all the way around, perfect, all the way along. Also this dog leg area, I've finalised that. So all the edges are nice and smooth now and at the level that I want them to be. So you can see the difference there, how much extra material needed to go on the edges. I'm only welding the edges up so that nothing chips away from the edges. That area there will be built up. It's only from about there to here with some metal filler, just because it's a little bit deeper than a mil. And then shape that, but it meets the door a lot better, a lot more perfectly. There's those edges again, nice and smooth this time, all filled in. Took quite a lot of work. The front door I had issues with the original door. The bottom of the door on the inner frame, so the inside frame, sort of where the door trim sort of sits, that sort of thing, so not the actual door skin. At the bottom of it, it was caved in. It was caved in so much that it was actually, the actual door skin wasn't pinching it, so it wasn't grabbing it at all anymore. It would have been a massive job to bring that down, and I couldn't work out a way to do it neatly. So having some spare doors, I thought I'll try the spare door that I've got, and that had a big dent in it, but the dent was a lot easier to get out than trying to get that buckle out of the other door. So I used that instead. Okay, so here we've got the 5mm gap. So between the doors, they align perfectly, as you can see. And this window frame needed quite a lot of work. So that was to match the curvature of the B-pillar. So I put a couple of slices into that and gave it an extra bend and then welded them back in. There as well and here. So the gap now between the door jamb and the window frame is perfect all the way along. I've added some material here, so I had to add about 1.5 mm of material there. That's all been shaped now, so what was happening is the frame was sitting down here, so aligned with this frame it wasn't sitting right, so now it sits nice, so it sort of all flows in the same sort of shape. The front area here, next to the corner of the A-pillar, so the drip rails I've finished off perfectly, so they all flow now, that custom drip rail that I've made. This gap is now 5mm. That needed a lot of material on, and you can just see where the welds have been started, so back there somewhere. So the guard is also a spare guard off a previous car that I had. I needed to use that guard and not the original guard that came with the car because the curve of the actual guard matched this door, which was off the same car, much better. So I don't know if that's something that happens from factory, whether they shape them slightly at the last minute, as they're assembling cars. I don't know how the process worked, but the original guard, the curve of that was off by about 3mm. If not more, to match this door. So as soon as I put this guard on, which is an original from this door, from that same car, that curve met perfectly with the door. Very, very strange. So the only issue with this guard was that it had rust down the bottom. So I put a plate, that's all been ground back and finished off. That's got a 5mm gap as well, so 5mm gap all along there. 5mm gap to the plenum. And now the bonnet has been started on as well. And that's got a 5mm gap to the guard. So that's all 5mm as well, all the way along there. And plenum to bonnet is 5mm as well, up to halfway. Then I'm going to flip the car over in the garage and start on the other side. I haven't got a new room at the moment. The other thing I needed to do to the guard was I needed to put a couple of shrinks in here, because where the guard started here, it had a massive curve, a massive bow that started straight away, which is the natural sort of shape of the guard, but I didn't like it. I had to flatten it out quite a bit because I want the flow of the actual panel. As you look down the panel, okay, Rowdy? As you look down the panel, I needed to flow a little bit better, so it needed to be a little bit straighter. So I've shrunk all that, and that's flattened it out quite a lot, which is nice. It's still got a little bit of a curve, obviously, but nowhere near what it used to. I did that with the Easy Beat, makes it a hell of a lot easier. Now the other thing that this guard needed was some spacers. So there's a mount frame that goes in there that mounts to the sort of engine bay, I guess, in a way, or the wheel well, whatever you would want to call that area. I'm not even sure what that's called. It needed a little bit of spacing, just needed 1mm at the top one, 1mm at the bottom one, and then 4mm at the bottom one, just so it sort of all matches the door and the guard matches the flow of the actual sill panel. Otherwise they'd sit at different areas. So all that work took a tremendous amount of effort and amount of work. Yeah, I can't believe how far out the actual window frames are to the door jambs. You know, I don't know if they're all like that or if it was just my car, but they were way off. I couldn't live with them. They had to be corrected. I made sure that the window frames were the actual shape of the window. So I made a cardboard template of the windows, checked them against the frames. They were out. So then now that the shapes have been corrected, they actually match the window frame perfectly. So I'm much happier with that. But a huge amount of work. I'm talking in the months. So a couple of hours every day, but it took at least 2 months from the back end of the car to the front end to get the gaps perfect and alignment perfect how I wanted it. The things that you have to remember, guys, when you're doing alignment is points that you cannot move that you have to reference off. So for instance, this point here where the door, that sort of swage line flows, you can't move that. You can't move it out, you can't move it in, you can't move it up, you can't move it down. You have to work with having that absolutely perfect. So that's your sort of starting point. The pillar, the quarter panel, sorry, can't be moved, so you've got to reference off that. So that point there has to be perfect as well, so you've got to reference off that. Then the actual door to the sill panel, that has to flow, you know, I believe. You shouldn't have the door further in or further out than that sort of curve. So that's all done now. Same with the front one, obviously. Then the two doors need to match at this point. They need to match at that point. The frames need to sit inside the jambs perfectly. The gaps have to be equal. Then when you get to this point here, you've got this point here that has to match. So this swage line continues, they have to match. That has to match the front guard and so on. This point here, again the sill panel to the bottom of the door. Then alignment, the guard to the sill panel there. So if you put a straight edge on here now, it actually flows from the sill panel across to the front guard, and there's no gap. So that needs to be perfect. Then to do your alignment of the actual bonnet, you've got to work off here. So these are the only points that you can work off. So that little curve, that little swage shape that's in the bonnet needs to meet the plenum in height, in angle here, so they can't be further out or further in that way. So that tells you that the bonnet is centered. Once you've set that and you've set the 5mm at both ends of those, then you know how far forward and how far back your guard will be, because this area of the guard needs to match the bonnet. So that needs to be straight there perfectly, height, etc. Like, there's all these little things that you've got to get spot on, and then you can start doing your gapping, because otherwise it's all out. And things like that make it extremely difficult. So now the next part that needs to be done is to rotate the car in the garage so that the boot is now at this end, the boot's, and then the bonnet's at the other end, and start again from the boot lid. But the boot lid's been done. Got the rear quarter panel all the way to the front, alignment, gaps, window frames. That's all for this little episode. Just a little quick little update, that's all it was. Now we've got to start all over again on the other side, but we'll go through that together. So I'll show you guys the whole process and every little detail that's involved in doing this sort of work. Thanks for watching, guys.